we have any college students that are Green Party in Louisiana? I know there are some. Wherever you or our students think of themselves ideologically, I want to argue this. Part of the fundamental building block to thoughtful, ethical citizenship, to what we all care about that comes out of a higher education for young people in America. Part of that is compassion. And I want to spend a minute on that because I don't mean just some kind of cheesy greeting card version of compassion. I mean the literal definition, the ability to walk in someone else's shoes, the ability to see through another human being unlike your own's eyes, the ability to care and the feeling of caring in your gut about another family and another school system's ability to raise their children to their children's God-given potential. I can tell you you're in the most technologically advanced, successful, wealthy country the world has ever seen that happens to have right now 9 million children without health insurance. And if all you know about those 9 million children is the statistic, 9 million children, that's not enough. Compassion is hard to get good at if it's only an intellectual exercise. If it isn't coupled with personal connectedness, strands of personal ties to people going through things unlike yourself, unlike what you and your childhood went through, experiences and cultures and problems that are distinct, yet when you tie yourself to them, realize they're uniquely similar and human. One of the biggest, most fundamental reasons for service learning as a culture to continue to work toward is that challenge of homogeneous isolation that young people, most of whom through no fault of their own, have grown up in the suburbanized lands of our country. And if I can put it most poignantly in terms of an anecdotal short story, I was taking classes just for my own edification. I have no interest or ability to become a minister. And I swear too much, I think. I love swearing, and I don't want to give that up. But I was taking classes at the Candler School of Theology, which, as many of you know, is at Emory in Atlanta. I was driving over on Wednesday nights, just exhausting myself, but loving it. Just putting on jeans, no one knew who I was. I was a student. I could raise my hand and say obnoxious things. I loved it. I'm over there during Hurricane Katrina. It was that semester. I was in a sociology of religion class with Steve Tipton, who writes with Robert Bella, who I think is the finest sociology of religion thinker in the country. Another talk. Sitting there, the professor walks in the week after the levees broke with a 2-night nationwide telephone poll. Interesting poll. Most of the questions revolved around the images from a helicopter down outside Convention Center, the center. Do you all remember those images? Seared on the conscience, the minds of most Americans. The first day before any support was there from the city, from the state, from the nation. Hundreds of people. 12 hours later, tens of thousands of people. People holding up signs saying, drop water, send help. People passing out from heat exhaustion. No sign of help. Telephone pole revolving around those images that Americans saw, with news helicopters hovering overhead. Student across from me notices demographic breakdown of the respondents by race. Professor thinks that's pretty interesting. We start going through the responses that way. Page 3. Did those images, and it explained the images I just explained to you, did those images anger you? 99% of African Americans. Yes, those images angered me. How could you see those images and not be angered? 56% of white Americans said they were angered. Next question, those images sadden you? 99% of African Americans. Yes. How could you see that happening to people and not be saddened? 60% of white Americans. Kind of an awkward tension in this seminar room. This African American student across from me crosses her arms. To summarize what she said, here we are in the most religiously devout, industrialized nation on earth. Which is true. There's not even a close second in industrialized nations. Depending on how you ask the question, 8 or 9 out of 10 Americans claim a belief in a higher power that requires obligations from each of us to every other individual. So she says, here we are, and that's the definition of our people. And you're telling me about 40% of white Americans weren't angered or saddened? This is a cold, racist country. There's a silence in the room. And I remember thinking, yeah, I mean, there are Americans who are racist. I don't think that 40% number on that telephone poll is capturing a cold, reactionary, harsh racism, though. I think that's a different story. And I suggest if Barack Obama were standing right here, he would agree with me. He would also agree that there isn't 40% of white Americans who are coldly, calculatedly, reactionarily racist. I raised my hand, tried to explain what I thought may have been a factor. The professor made some points, and we agreed it required more research. Look at more polls. Read some more articles during the next week. We come back the following week, the professor walks in with more stuff, I walk in with more stuff, and it turns out there was something else going on in that statistic. There was more polling that week, but there was also just first-hand interview responses back and forth on news networks explaining what the response was that initial 2-day period. And a lot of it was this. Look, don't get me wrong. I don't want to see any of those people get hurt. I mean, I certainly don't wish them harm. I feel bad for them. But let's be honest. I saw that storm rolling through the Gulf of Mexico 6 days earlier. My aunt and uncle made it to Birmingham. My cousins drove to Atlanta. I mean, I feel bad for those people. But why didn't they just get in their cars and drive away? Answer? A little bit of a wake-up call for God-fearing, well-meaning, suburbanized, college-educated adults across the country. Vast numbers of them having no idea, no experience with the fact that millions of Americans, and when I say millions of Americans, I mean millions of working Americans, playing by the rules, working paycheck to paycheck, by the millions without an automobile. 4 times that many million Americans with a car, but only enough money to fill a gas tank up once in between pay periods. With a 16-hour wait on the interstate system coming out of New Orleans, the calculation looks a little different to that family. What a powerfully important lesson and challenge to a suburbanizing nation. Not to feel guilty for wanting your kids in the school system. I'm going to convince someone to marry me and have kids someday, and I want them to go to good schools. I'm not going to feel bad about it. But I will always remain committed to improving every school, and I want to have the work of my life committed to connecting human beings to human beings unlike themselves and helping to facilitate causes to work on bigger than our own individual self-interests. Now here's where we get fascinating. The college side of this story. That Robert Putnam research, 30-year decline. Old people, white people, black people, southern people, northern people. Little blip on the radar screen, 97, 98, 99. 15 to 25-year-olds start to reverse that trend. Most people's reaction right then was my reaction, which was a cynical reaction. Probably what maybe one or two of you all would have reacted to hearing those statistics, thinking, I don't think there's anything that special going on here. I think these kids are just trying to juice their resume.